Sound like it's crying. Good morning, everybody. Wednesday, June the 17th. This is the Made in Paradise podcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we're talking about friendship, a subject I love to talk about. And Anthony Ferguson, you're starting us out. Let's talk about friendship.
Let me ask you both. What is the most valuable lesson a friend has taught you? Let's start with Darren.
The most valuable lesson a friend has taught me,
Right.
is that they're there when I most need them. You know, whenever I truly need a friend, they're always there when I most need them. And so I think that's the most valuable lesson that I've learned from my friends in the past.
John?
Not very long before my first wife, Lisa, died, I was at this big youth event. I was an assistant youth pastor working at a church, and there was an older pastor there that had been a music minister for a long time. His son was the youth minister, and so he was just there kind of helping us out, but you know, he's a guy with a whole lot of spiritual experience. And I don't know, for whatever reason, he told me this, but he said, John, let me tell you something important. We were standing in the middle of a gym and there was kids all around us. I don't know how we got on this topic, but I remember this thing that he said, and I've remembered it my whole life. And he said, you know how guys in the church, he said, when they see each other, they'll say something like, I see you got your hair cut. I had never known what a $6 haircut looks like, right? Just as kind of like a little insult, or say something like, hey man, great tie. If you keep wearing that, it's going to come back into style. You know, just anything, just a little rib. And he was right. Men did that to each other all the time, right? I was a men's minister. I saw him do it all the time. And he said this, he said, John, he said, when you see someone, be honest with them about how you feel. You don't have to be syrupy sweet or anything about that, but don't use an insult to tell someone that you like them, because that's what that is. You're really just trying to say, I really like you as a person. And that's brotherly love, right? What they say is phileo, brotherly love. He said, when you see someone, tell them how you feel about them. And then he said this. He said, and John, keep all your accounts short. And what I mean is if you love someone, tell them that you love them, because you never know how long they're going to be here. And I started thinking about that, and that made me tell my wife I loved her more often, right? Because he had said that. And I told it to other people in my life, but not too long after that, within 5 years of that conversation, my wife and my mentor, who were the two most important people in my life, both died, right? And so I remember that was the lesson that came to mind whenever you asked the question.
Great. So let me ask Darren this. Have you ever had to choose between being honest and protecting a relationship?
Yeah, multiple times. I mean, there's a how can I really explain this? I mean, where I'm from, I'd say there's a strong drug problem that affects this area, and methamphetamines runs pretty wild through here. And so some of the people you just wouldn't expect, you know, would get attached to it. And so I had a friend where, I mean, I had to be honest with him around his family that I was scared for, you know, his situation, because he was a good friend of mine and he fell down the wrong path. And so, and that broke the relationship apart between me and him completely, because I obviously told his parents that I was worried for him.
Great. What about you, John?
I thought about all the pastors I had to confront in my lifetime, which was very, very difficult, right? And it definitely would be relationship busters when you can kind of see a lot of times when a pastor, for example, starts to have an affair on his wife. It becomes obvious in certain ways. You see the way people act when they get around each other, right? And you see flirting go on that's inappropriate in the church. the scripture says, among you, there must not even be a hint of sexual immorality. And that's true, right? And sexual immorality being defined as someone getting injured in a sexual relationship. And so, I had to face all kinds of problems in confronting people, like confronting a youth pastor for having sex with an underage girl, or choir members for cheating with each other on their spouses who are also in the choir. So two couples in the choir,
drama.
and they're swingers, but only two of them know. So, that those kind of things, but not just that. Anthony, I confronted someone who represented themselves in business to be a Christ follower. They just told me how big of a Christ follower they were, and on and on and on. And then they made me a promise, an absolute promise, here are the details promise. Yes, I agree, promise. And then broke that promise. And because they broke that promise, that had a real cost to me. And I just confronted that person last week, and it's broken up the relationship, because once you do me that, past behavior is the best indicator of future behavior.
Right.
And so I just, I don't want any more cheese. I just want out of the trap.
Yeah. Right. So this last question is for John. John, do we choose our friends, or do certain people enter our life for a reason?
Maharaji, my guru, Babadim Karoli, he says that everyone we meet is for a particular reason. And having studied reincarnation, near-death experiences, I believe that we choose our lives. And that most of the people that are in our inner circle, Ram Dass called those people a soul pod, meaning that those souls reincarnated together over and over again in order to learn certain lessons together, or to advance their souls together. And so he also believed that everyone we've met before. And sometimes you meet people and you just click with them, right? The way that I met the two of you is very unusual. You wouldn't think of any way that we would have had this journey together, would you? No way. I mean, you just could not have even dreamt of % of the miraculous, crazy journey we've had together. Okay.
Right.
There's some affinity that we have together that seems to come from another life.
Right.
And I think that there's a lot of evidence, if you want to look at it, that says that that's true.
I'm curious though, Anthony, are you finished?
That was my last question.
I just had this thought that popped in my mind, because I feel like friendship is changing now that we're getting into more of a technical age. And I feel like back in the day, with your friends, you'd go out and you'd hang out with them. You go to their house and hang out with them. And I think that's changing completely now that we have computers, and some people have friends from across the world, but they've never met them in person because they've just played video games with them. That's how they do it. And so kids today, I feel like they're losing that connection, that real friendship.
I think in the United States, I would say that it's worse than it is in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Because I can see in Costa Rica and in Costa Ricans, and probably I would go as far as to say is the Latino culture in general is just more family oriented than folks in the United States, just in my experience. It's like it was 20 years ago here, right? As regard to the importance of family and family gathering.
Right.
And the further you get out in the country here, you might go back 40 years in that culturally. It's like, so where Darren lives in Benezeladon, that's a lot of farmers. And so they're very old fashioned is what people would call them.
Oh yeah.
And so, but
they prepare a pig. they
yeah, right.
6 months. They take care of a pig for 6 months.
I think that the technology is continually going to divide us and make us less spiritual. Defining spiritual and spirituality is our level of connectedness with whatever we want to be connected with, other people or the earth or whatever we define as our higher self or God or all of those things. Spirituality is connectedness. I think that the electronics is just going to keep making it worse.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I mean, I don't think we've really given our definition of friendship, because friendship, I feel like every person kind of has a different definition of friendship. We
Okay,
kinda
let's
have a small discussion.
let's start with Jesus's discussion of Jesus's definition, because I think that's kind of a pinnacle where we can go to, and then we can talk about other types of friendship. But Jesus said, okay, no greater love has a man than this, than he laid down his life for his friend, right? So a friend who would life for you, that's genuinely a friend. So there's our top level of it. And I think that people use the word friend too easily. I have a friend that this, right? I have a friend that this. And I think that that's a word that's thrown around without a definition, like love is. And to me, friendship is when someone chooses you over themselves. And so Jesus sets the highest bar for that, right? And you have friends. So let's say you have a friend, and this is a good way to measure it. I have a friend that I can loan $20 and be sure I'll get it back, $100, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000. Well, there's one measurement, right? I can have a friend that I can loan that much money to, won't have to ask, I will get that money back. I can be sure, right? And we used to say, to define friendship back in Louisiana, we would say, he's a money, life, wife guy. I would trust him with my money and my life and my wife. So there's another pinnacle. If you just kind of put that right underneath what Jesus said. So we have, I'll give my life for you, and then I trust you with my money and my life and my wife. So there you got two pinnacles of friendship. And then you start looking at where the bottom is. And where the bottom is, I think I want people to be up there near that bar, or I don't want to invest my time in them. And you've seen this in my life. As I was thinking this morning, how many people in different business situations have the two of you seen me invest in over these years? I would say that it's probably 300 people. If you add up all the people Anthony's seen me with, all the people that Darren's seen me with, 300 people have come into my path for, let's say, more than a month, right? Because we fired a bunch of them, but maybe it's 400, maybe it's 500. I don't know through all of these projects. So if you look at all of those people and the ones I tried to invest in, how many of you think that was worth John's time?
That one.
Well, it really depends on how you look at it, because you probably helped them out in some way where you given them a complete different perspective on life. And so you can say, was it a waste of your time? Well, maybe, but in their world, it might have helped them out greatly, because they might have continued doing whatever they were doing for a year, maybe 5 years, or however long it might be. But they might have a realization one day that clicks and be like, oh shit, he was right.
I was thinking about the crew that I was teaching to process, return DeWalt and Makita and all that stuff from Home Depot in Panama, right? And I was thinking about that level of employee or team member, and they would never ever be exposed to a person like me, right? But I was teaching them to do that process. And then later, probably some of them were involved in that break-in where they broke in and stole tools, right?
Right.
And so for me, that's not a good investment of my time. I'm investing in the wrong caliber of person.
Right.
You see how that goes? Now I've invested in YouTube more than anyone else and my wife in the last, 15, 16 years. And so those investments have really paid off for me, right?
Yeah.
Really have been a good investment. So I made a whole bunch of bad ones to figure out what the good investments look like.
But as you said, those people come into your life for a reason. They show up there, and they're meant to be something, and it might not be just for you, and it might be for you, but it's also for them as well, that they get that experience.
All right, let's pull back on friendship. So we set this high bar, then we talked about a second bar, and the bottom is way down here. We talk about the bottom, right? This is the people these are friends. These are people who are just acquaintances, right? And I don't know if those relationships are valuable investments or not. So that's where down where the floor is, and we have to see the bars is. So what do you think about that in the definition of friendship?
Well, my definition of friendship, I mean, though all those things are true, you have levels of friendship where you have your best friend, and that best friend of yours is willing to take that bullet for you, willing to jump out and push you out of the way to save you from danger. And then you have friends that, in my opinion, they're just an exchange of emotions. So it's affection, it's a sense of humor, it's could be love in the moment, respect, or whatever that might be. Where if you see them, you know they're going to give that respect, but you don't have that same feeling that they're going to jump in front of you if someone's taking a shot at you. And so that's kind of my definition of friendship.
Anthony, what do you think? What's your thought?
I think in these days, it's hard to find a real friend, right? For example, we have all this, like say Darren, you and I, we have this great relationship, but we all have like this background from old times, right? But this new generation, like Darren said, you can hear the teenager now, they talking to my best friend because I play Free Fire or I play whatever, Call of Duty, and they haven't met the person in real life, and they could say things about the person, but they don't really know if the one behind
they have no idea. It's almost like they're living in a complete delusion about the other person.
Right.
Because they don't have the face-to-face experience and all the things that go with a face-to-face experience.
Right.
Or real life experience.
And I say this, y'all have heard me say this 100 times, you never know if someone's your friend till the shit hits the fan.
Right.
You have to go through some problems with someone until you really know if they're your friend. Up until then, it hasn't been tested, so you just don't know.
You don't.
Exactly. You can't get that experience through a video game.
Nope. Not going to happen. And so, Anthony, I would say that realize too that friends are not just found but developed.
Right.
And you're going to attract into your life not who you want but who you are.
Right.
And so, if you lie a little bit, you'll probably have some people around you that lie a little bit. If you gossip a little bit, you'll probably have some people around you gossip a little bit. Right? And so, you're going to attract in your life who you are. It's that simple. And you and I, all of us have a mantra that we use in our life together to agree on an idea. And that mantra includes only dealing with trustworthy people. And so when someone does something to us that's not trustworthy, then we say, this is not a person bound to be one of our friends because we are trustworthy people. And we act in a trustworthy way, and we want to be honest and forthright with the things that we say. Because my guru says, tell the truth with a period at the end. Not sometimes, not when it's convenient, not always tell the truth. And I live by that, and I have for a long time. So friendship has to be real friendship is going to have to be someone that really resonates at your level of morality and ethics.
Yep.
I agree completely. And it's so stupid. So, for example, in regard to what you say to say always the truth, it's weird how some people just they could decide with no problem, with no consequence. They could decide to say the truth, and they choose to say a lie. I show up to the work late because my dad died. Come on.
Okay, and how many times have the three of us laughed about the excuses that were given from other people that we were obvious lies?
Right.
And where they could have told us the truth, they just made a mistake and said, I'm sorry, and they'd have been fine.
Right.
But instead, Anthony, they broke whatever and then lied about it. And then we caught them and we had to fire them because they lied, not because they broke whatever they broke.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And all they had to do was say, I made a mistake. Right? I made a mistake. It could have been forgiven, but they didn't do that. They had to lie. And so then we had to presume, okay, well, they're not going to tell us the truth in the future. And that's much more costly and dangerous than them having broken some item, right?
Exactly.
Right. That same teaching I give to my kids, because I gather my kids and said, I don't care whatever mistake you make, because we are humans. We all make mistakes, but don't try to hide the mistake and just come to me with a lie, trying to that, oh, my dad not gonna know what happened. I already go through that part, right? I was a kid before being an adult, so I know all this tricky thing that kids had. So just come with the truth, and you'll be released. You say, Papa, I made a mistake. I broke your whatever. I broke this, or I lost this, and everything will be fine.
But you taught that to your kids because I taught it to you, right?
Right.
But telling a lie is basically.
You can't judge people for what they've never been taught, Anthony, is what I was going to say. And in most people's lives, they need someone to come in and say, do you see the cause and effect of karma? Do you see that if you lie to people, other people are going to lie to you? Do you see this action going on in your life? Because when you stop lying, you become a lie detector. The less you lie, the more you will recognize someone else when they are lying or trying to mislead you or deceive you.
Yeah, I'm going to say if you tell a lie, you're not preventing the inevitable, which is someone figuring out the truth eventually.
Right.
And then you live under stress, right? Oh shit, will he figure it out?
I have to remember it. Yeah, right. For what? When the truth works, and we one time we were trying to sell a chain of Whataburger stores in Texas, and before you could sell the stores, you had to have all these inspections done, right? So that everyone knows there was appraisals and inspections, and so everyone knows exactly what they're getting and the condition of everything. And in the process, on one of the main stores, we found out that a tank for waste oil, like wasted cooking oil, had leaked and gone into the ground. And the EPA had found out, and they were going to not only fine the present owner, but they were going to require that had be dug out and removed. And it was going to be $1 million expense on a deal that was, I don't know, call it $25 million. And I was a junior partner in this firm, and the senior partner and I, and we were in his office, and we were arguing about what are we going to say. And this was in my 20s, and still in a time when I still would consider telling something untrue, right? And we were going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And his old father, who was about 70 years old, was laid out on the couch, and he was listening to us, but he was acting like he was napping, but he just laid back on this tough leather couch. And we went on for about 20 minutes trying to come up with another thing. We're going to tell him this lie, we're going to tell him this lie, we're going to tell him this lie. And he just right out of the blue, he said, boys, he said, y'all are so stupid, you're so young and stupid. He said, why would you try to come up with a lie when the truth will work just fine? And then he explained how we could tell the truth and still get the deal done, right? But we never considered, we'll just tell them about this situation, right? We were trying to figure out another way not to tell them. And since he ever said that, I always came back around to the truth just works fine. If you plan ahead in this moment that I'm always going to tell the truth, then you're always having to plan ahead, because you have to make sure that what you say is still going to be good in the future, not just in this moment. And so in that way, when you practice telling the truth, being as truthful as you need to be in every situation, right? Because you don't have to truth doesn't mean you tell someone everything. That's not what truth is. Truth means you don't deceive someone, right? And we're supposed to be talking about friendship, but I really can't be friends with somebody who lies. Mm-hmm. If they lie to me, it just doesn't work. It's so boring. It's like, is that the best you can do? Really? You can't just say the truth and run your life that way. You have to lie. It's weakness. That's what it is. It's just spiritual and emotional weakness. Darren, did you have any more questions about friendship before we wrap this episode up?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, there's, choose your friends carefully, get rid of them quickly when you see that they go downhill.
Yeah. And before you call someone a friend, before you this is my friend, right? Be careful with what you say, because your mouth is a prophet, right? You're living in the echo of your previous thoughts. Your mouth's a prophet for your future. If someone's not your friend, really, don't call them that.
So how long before you could call someone a friend?
I think that's an individual situation. And like I said, for me, it's rarely going to be before the shit has hit the fan, before I've seen proof of how they're going to act in a situation where they have to choose between me and them, and they pick me.
Right,
Right.
and I have back in the time when I was a teenager, I had this experience. I was in the church, right, and you believe everything they said, right, in regard to friendship and all that. So I thought that all the members were my friend, right, and I started working with John. We was in Santo Domingo, this time of my business, and I have this thought that there was a atheist. Right, and I'm like, oh, atheists. I don't think I want to have a relationship with the atheists, right? Because they're not good people, whatever. With all my church teaching, right?
What you were taught.
What I
right?
thought. Thank you. So then I said, oh no. So the thing is, the bottom line is that I was sick, very sick, and this guy lived a long distance from my house, and he literally, I used to take the bus back and forth, and he took me with his car in an opposite direction from his house. He took me all the way to my house, and a couple days after, he brought me a bag with pills. Right? He was worried, and I'm like, oh, not even my friends from the church asked me, how are you, whatever, and this atheist act this way. He presented to me that he was with me in that bad moment for me. Then I say, oh, wait a minute, I was confused. Right?
Right.
So things like that, you could judge and say, this is a real friend, or they're just your friend because you are in a good mood and you have money and you have wealth and all that. But what about when I'm sick?
So, right. Okay. So that I'm going to close with a story about friendship. I went to work for a friend of mine who had a huge office furniture company in Dallas, about 300 employees. He hires me as the vice president to come in and be in charge of his liquidation department. And this was back during 2008, 2009, when all of the foreclosures went on, the economy got bad, and all these mortgage companies went out of business. And so he was in the furniture business, and he wanted to buy the mortgage company offices, but they also had computers and copiers and network gear that he didn't know anything about, and I did. And so he hired me to take over his whole liquidation division. And I was in my early 30s, right? 2008. I was in my early 30s, somewhere around in the mid 30s. And he hired me to take over his liquidation division as a VP. And when I got the job, the 4 other people who were key in that division were all 20 years older than me. And so they all looked at me like, there's a kid that's been hired to be our boss, right? So everyone was hostile and mad right from the beginning when I came in. Now, remember, I'm friends with the president of this company for more than 10 years, done a whole lot of business together because we've been in the auction business together. I've been in the auction business separately, done auctions together. Anyway, we knew each other. The guy who ran the liquidation department before me, so I got hired as his boss, and he'd never had a boss. The guy who hired it before me, I knew him too and had a good relationship with him until I got into the company. And when I got into the company, then he didn't like me anymore. And he started to do everything he could to mess up my job. Anything he could. He was gossiping about me, and he was telling people not to follow my instructions, and he resented the fact that I, as a young guy, had been hired to be his boss. And so I knew when his birthday was from the payroll records, and I knew that he loved classic rock bands, and he loved a bunch of the same bands that I did. So I went to Barnes & Noble, and I found this beautiful coffee table book that had all these album covers from all the bands that we both liked, like 60s and 70s and 80s. It's just beautiful artwork. It was an incredible coffee table book. And so I went to his house. I had his address because of the payroll records. And on his birthday, it was a Sunday, I believe, or I'm pretty sure it was a Sunday. I showed up at his house, and I held the book behind my back, and I rang the doorbell. And so when he opened the door, he was quite surprised to see me in a not so good way. And he started, not with hello, no, he said, "What do you want?" And so I pulled that book out from behind my back, and it was wrapped, right? The gift wrap on it in a bow. I said, "Happy birthday, George." And his whole face changed again. I mean, just completely changed again. And there was this long, like 6 or 7 second awkward silence. And then he had a screen door, right? Because he was talking to me through the screen door. And he opened the screen door, and he says, "I think you better come in." And so we walk in and we sit down at his kitchen table, and he unwraps that gift, and I think it was everything he could do not to cry. And he said something like, and looking down like this, right? And he said something like, "I've been really an asshole to you the whole time since you got here." And he said, "I'm really sorry I did that. You didn't deserve it." And then we became like best friends. To this day, still good friends. Still good friends. I trust him absolutely. He gives me his word. Absolutely trust him. He turned around just completely 180 degrees, and he became my biggest fan. And he protected me and watched my back the entire time I was there.
He was just jealous, right?
Well, you don't want a kid hired as your boss, Anthony. It'd be like if I hired Douglas to be your boss, right?
Like I said, he was just jealous.
That doesn't make any sense to you. That make any sense. Why would you do that? Because, and he didn't know what experience I had or any of those things. Right. But the best part of this story is a week later, that next weekend, I was at home and my phone rings on Sunday. And he says, "Hey, John, can you come by my house?" It's a week later after his birthday. He said, "Can you come by my house for a few minutes? I got something I want to give you." And I went to his house. And by the way, he was divorced, single. I went to his house. "Hey, George, how you doing?" He said, "Oh, good. Come on in." Did a completely different reception, just happy to see me. And I walked into his kitchen, and he had cooked me a whole turkey, a potato salad, a whole mashed potatoes, rolls, like a feast. It was like 6 different dishes in a huge platter, right? He said, "I cooked all this for your family." And it was enough to feed us probably 2 or 3 days or 4 days. I don't know, right? And I cooked all this for your family. He's a fabulous cook. And then from that point on, for the next 2 years or whatever that I worked that deal, we took off early every Friday around 2 or 3 o'clock, and 4 or 5 of us all went to George's house, and George would barbecue, and we'd sit around George's table and bullshit, right? Every Friday for 2 years. And George and there was another friend of George's. I can't remember his name now, but died. Not too long ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. He died 4 or 5 years ago. But every Friday, 2 years. So that was a real friendship and how it started. And it just got better and better and better along the way. All right. This has been the Made in Paradise podcast. We do this every week, every weekday, Monday through Friday. And you can like and subscribe, and you'll have more of this kind of content where we talk about life lessons that you can really use, something you can really put in practice in your life today that makes your life better. So the Made in Paradise podcast is brought to you by Proven Performer. And that's the guys you're looking at on the screen. And we specialize in selling big closeout deals. And every day we feature a new deal. And so now let me tell you about one. Our deal of the day is genuine Nike sports balls. We have 1,000 basketballs, 500 soccer balls, and 500 volleyballs. It's on 10 pallets. It's all genuine licensed Nike balls. You got to take them all. $7.50 a piece. You Amazon sellers out there, you whatnot sellers out there, you're always bugging us saying, your deals are too big. Your deals are too big. I can't buy it. Show me something smaller. Here's something that's never going to go down in price. These balls are never going to be $4.99 a piece at retail. In fact, because of the price of oil, they're going up. And it's genuine Nike. We have never seen this, I don't know, in years. 10 pallet, $15,000 investment. Genuine Nike balls. First hand in the air gets it. Reach out by WhatsApp or email at the information below. And either Darren Fingleton or Anthony Ferguson or myself will be happy to tell you about this deal. And thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.